for meat and dairy. We'll talk about that. Are there going to be bailouts or subsidies or financial help for the plant-based businesses that are actually taking us in the right direction and not a step backwards? There's lots to talk about in the plant-based business world and the growth, as I think during COVID-19, people are starting to experience that maybe plant-based options and plant-based foods are the better way to go. So let me bring in my guest. Oh, he is the reason we really have plant-based foods now today. It's Seth Tibbott, the founder of Tofurkey and still chairman of the board of that company. Seth, thanks for being with me.
Hey, Elizabeth, thanks for having me on. Great to see you.
Yes, nice to see you again, as always. So it's been a very busy time for you. You have a new book out, In Search of the Wild Tofurky, that we're going to talk about. But first and most pressing business, of course, is that plant-based business is doing better than ever. Talk to me about what it's like right now at Tofurkey during COVID times.
Yeah, we're experiencing a very hefty growth curve right now, the last couple months, especially April and March. March, which was really the first kind of COVID sort of impacted month, we saw a 36% growth rate. And in April, we're tracking to beat that a little bit and hit like 40-ish percent. So it's been a really challenging time. And anytime you have that kind of growth, it really is impactful, especially in a business like ours that's been around for a long time. When you're new, you sell to one store and you sell then to two stores, and now you've got growth. But after you've been mature, it's really a challenge to keep up with that kind of growth. And then on top of that challenge, there's the whole idea, we've got to keep our workforce and our employees safe producing all this food. And so my stepson, Jamie, who is the president and CEO now and just doing like an incredible job, he's a PhD science guy. And so he's been able to stay like one step ahead of
Mm.
everything kind of that's coming down the road on the virus. And, we've had to recreate our production lines so that everybody is staying safe distances apart and the social distancing. We've taken the lunch schedules and we've shifted all of those around so that no more than 10 people are in this big lunchroom at a time.
Mhm.
And just continuing to try and keep people safe. The other thing that's happened, of course, is a lot of our employees have children at home who now are not in school. So that
Yeah.
complicates childcare. And many of their partners have lost work. And so we have raised our pay scale for this COVID opportunity, and we've moved our um, review, which was going to happen in July, up till April to make it just get more money in people's pockets and just trying to help people make it through this challenging time right now. So
I
it's
have
amazing.
It is amazing. I have so many questions just about that little bit that you've said right there. First of all, have you ever seen this kind of growth before in the Tofurkey history? And for those of you who don't know, I do want to send you to my Awesome Vegans podcast interview that came out about 2 months ago with Seth Tibbott. And we really talk about the history of plant-based. No one can talk about that like Seth can, because it's really on your shoulders, Seth. Pretty much you and Light Life started the plant-based movement and really got plant-based foods out there. So we have a plant-based movement today because of you and because of Tofurkey. So I am very grateful to you for
Oh,
that.
yeah. Thank you.
But if you want that history, please go to that long interview, because today, of course, we're talking about things that are current for today. But so you've been around for decades. Of course, if you go from one store to two stores, it's 100% growth. So the numbers might be skewed, but in terms of actual quantity of items sold, have you ever seen this kind of growth?
And, not really, since, we did make this big jump when we pivoted from being a tempeh company
Mm-hmm.
that was only selling regional to a Tofurkey company that was selling, to a national and international audience. But even that growth was kind of staged over time, because people were unsure whether they wanted this, crazy name Tofurkey product into the stores. But um, we then hit kind of a strategy where if we were growing at 10 to 15% year over year, we were quite happy because that was, manageable growth. It wasn't like cancerous, like so stressful that we couldn't handle it. And, we've been a family owned independent company, so we don't have like Big Daddy Warbucks pockets supporting us. So, we grow by borrowing money and paying it back, borrowing more money, paying it back, and reinvesting profits, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I really, but to see this 30 to 40% growth numbers
Hmm.
month over month, is pretty daunting. Although, we were growing, in January and February some too, so it isn't totally, around the COVID thing, but definitely COVID has raised the profile of that and of Tofurkey, and it's been great to see. It's just a lot to keep up with though right
Hmm.
now. So
What do you attribute this to? Is it that grocery stores aren't getting meat and so they're enlarging their orders, or is it truly consumer demand that's saying, "I think I'd rather go plant-based"? Do you have any sense for what's driving this growth?
I think that probably a lot of it is just, people in quarantine buying
Hmm.
large amounts of product for one thing.
Hmm.
And Tofurkey is very convenient. It has a long shelf life, so you can keep
Hmm.
it in your refrigerator and it's not going to spoil so quickly. So I think there's a fair amount of that, number one. But I do think that people are starting to connect the dots more. People like uh, my brother, who isn't like a vegan, but he's always been very close to vegan. Like he's like writing me, emails now and connecting the dots to
Hmm.
the pandemic, and this comes from animals. And he's like, we have to. He's becoming
Hmm.
an evangelical supporter
Join the
of
team.
this right now. I mean, he's always been great, but so him and just conversations that I've had with friends, and anecdotally, I think that there's really a lot of people that are connecting the dots and figuring out that not only is there this um, virus that came transmitted itself to humans from animals, but
Hmm.
the larger picture is that what conditions are we creating with this animal agriculture and climate change, and by destroying wildlife habitats, which have really been a barrier in protecting us from a lot of these viruses jumping into our gene pool. And like that is what I think is the scarier thing. I also think the antibiotic
Yes.
picture of the resistance that is possible. It's just a ticking time bomb. Even though this particular virus didn't come from animals like farm animals like swine flu and bird flu, we've already seen that.
Hmm.
This is a really serious situation that we have ourselves in now, and
Hmm.
I think that the farm animal agriculture is a ticking time bomb for sure.
Hmm. You give me a great segue. Before I read an excerpt from The Guardian, Jonathan Safran and Aaron Gross wrote this. Jonathan Safran being the author of Eating Animals, and Aaron Gross is an associate uh, professor at the University of San Diego. Before I read this clip from their article in The Guardian, I want to say that's one of the reasons why I started the Plant-Based Business Hour, because in the beginning of COVID, I was concerned that people weren't making the connection between eating meat and actually these pandemics. And right now we have COVID-19, which started in a retail slaughterhouse. A wet market is indeed a retail slaughterhouse. It's no different than the slaughterhouses that we have here in the United States, where they kill animals. That's exactly what happens in quote unquote wet markets, which are retail slaughterhouses. So people don't get confused with words that throw them off and think that it happens in some dark alley over there. It is what we do here all the time in communities, and then also in formal slaughterhouses. So I wanted to make sure that people made that connection between not just the pandemic that we have now, but all meat-borne pandemics, have come from Asian bird flu, swine fever, as you discussed, mad cow disease, Ebola. These are all meat-borne pathogens. Let me read from this article, The Guardian. Pathogens do not respect species boundaries either. Influenza and coronaviruses move fluidly between human and animal populations, just as they move fluidly between nations. When it comes to pandemics, there's not animal health and human health, no more than there is Korean health or French health. Social distancing works only when everyone practices it, and everyone includes animals. So he's talking there about the conditions in factory farms, and when you have animals in such tight quarters, and as you said, Seth, when you cut down natural habitats so there's no boundaries between us, then you have transmission, and that's where we are now.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. And I also want to point out, I mean, people tend to also say, oh, well, these wet markets, and they only happen in China, and it's just a Chinese problem. And they've solved that because they've, you know, put a kibosh to wet markets. But these happen, all around the world, like New York City, like
Yes.
London, like
Chicago.
Chicago, Prague.
Mm-hmm.
I know had a big one, so it's not just limited to them, and it's not the only way that viruses can escape either from the animal kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
We just need to leave the animals alone. How about
Yes.
that for
Yeah.
Earth Day?
How
Can we
about
do that?
that for Earth Day? I can, Seth. You can too. And because of you, we all can. Before we hop off from the true business topics, you were saying that you were doing social distancing in the Tofurkey plants. A lot of the meat and dairy have come under harsh criticism, as should be, because they weren't allowing their workers sort of their rights to be safe and healthy, and they were coerced to work in tight quarters. You were talking about how you've reimagined your entire factory, but you've also talked about incredible growth. So tell me, are you hiring? What's going on there for employees? Is there a chance for people to get in?
Oh yeah, and anytime that you have this kind of growth, you need to put the amount of people to it that can, and some of it, like I said too, is just trying to adapt to people's new lives where they have to share
Mm-hmm.
childcare and stuff, and
Yes.
so they may not be able to work all the as much as they had before. So there's that, but there's also, yeah, there's positions. So we are hiring at tofurkey.com, so people can go to that website, and there's a button to click on there to find out more. And it's not just production jobs, but there's logistics and other positions too. But our team is just, Jamie's just put a great team in place, and the team uh, has just risen to the occasion, and in a very challenging situation. Like, I just have such respect for the whole Tofurkey team and the job that they've done. So it's very heroic. Um,
Yes, I like that
and
word.
I think that this, one of the benefits perhaps of this virus, if there is one, is just changing our viewpoint on what a hero is and who's a hero. Like
Mm,
these people that are working on the floor at Tofurkey in production are heroes.
mm,
And food service workers are heroes. People, the clerks in the grocery store, the people stocking the shelves,
absolutely.
the first responders, the nurses, the
Mhm,
doctors. These we've maybe had appreciation for them, but maybe not as much as we really should have. And
mhm,
that is really, I think, um, an attitude that hopefully is forever changed, and we can really honor these people doing the essential job of bringing food to
mhm.
us, because we need to eat.
We do need to eat. And I love the fact that you bring up the word essential, because that's been one of the I'll say excuses. Other people might choose other words. That meat and dairy have been deemed essential, but of course, I live without meat and dairy. You live without meat and dairy. In fact, meat and dairy really hindered me, and when I gave it up, I realized what kind of boost I got. Talk to any doctor, and they'll tell you the same. So, I would say that those aren't actually essential businesses. I do just fine without them, as have all the vegans, the millions of vegans around the world who have done the same. So, your choice of the word essential is interesting. I'll also say that when I last looked on your website, the jobs of which you speak were not just temporary jobs. Some of those jobs are actually permanent jobs because you're looking at permanent growth.
Oh yeah, I mean, this has been a really good year. We have some new products. We have our own entry into the plant-based burger market that is doing great. I've been cooking those out on the grill on my porch like almost every day. I just think they're so good. And but it's tempeh is growing. We have some new cheese that's going to be coming out soon that was supposed to launch in March at the Expo West trade show where I was supposed to meet with you,
Yes.
and then the show was canceled, and so that is on hold. And necessarily, because we're so busy now focusing on just filling the pipeline with our current products that we've committed to, that getting new products right now is sort of taken a back burner, but we'll be able to bring that out by the year end, I think. And I think it's going to be great. We've been working on it for a long time.
Well, so I got to say selfishly, I got to get my hands on that burger, and I'm counting on you to get me a burger because I've been waiting for that burger for a while. But I've also been waiting for Moocho cheese, which I know you told me about last time we sat down for an interview, that was really going to be your next big launch, and obviously it's on hold. So, do you have any sense for when we might be getting Tofurkey Moocho cheese?
Um, it really depends on how long this sort of the COVID program lasts, because a lot of stores now are in the same sort of situation that Tofurkey is
Mm,
in that they're really not looking to add new products so much now. It's just an all hands on deck
sink or
kind of
swim.
time for the stores and the buyers. So, the buyers have their own windows when they can look at products and
Mm.
everything. And in the middle of a pandemic, I'll tell you, is not really a great time to launch anything, including
A
books. Let me
book,
tell you
yes.
that. I mean,
Yeah.
not the best timing, but that's it is what it is, and you just do the best that you can. But I would say hopefully by the fall we could see Mucho hitting the stores and getting out
Okay.
there. But it's really, really some a good breakthrough, I think, for cheese. So I mean, I've been amazed at what the job they've done.
Well, can you give us any sneak tips? Like, is it cheddar? Is it pepper jack? Is it a spread? Is it hard? Does it melt?
There's a good, yeah, oh yeah, it's good, very good melting. We have a shredded mozzarella, and we have a
Mm.
shredded cheddar, and we also have some cream cheeses that are really amazing and flavor too, spreadables. So it's a whole line,
So, okay,
and
so we'll look for that in the fall. I have a question here from Nancy. She's wanting to know. She is a meat eater, and she's wanting to know what's in Tofurkey. And I'll say, if you want to tell us what's in Mucho cheese when that's to come, that's great too.
yeah, sure. Well, there's 43 Tofurkey products, first of all, but they're all based on organic soy and tofu. And we tend to go with the traditional lightly processed forms of soy, which is the organic tofu and organic soybeans that are made into tempeh, which is a fermented food and really a miracle food. It's where I
It is.
started, and one of my favorite proteins. So Tofurkey is basically a combination of the lightly processed soy, like tofu, which has been in Asia for centuries
Mhm.
and proven to be a very healthy product, and then vital wheat gluten and spices, and it's just a really tasty alternative to what you're probably eating, as meat. And I think the chicken is also a very tasty product that we have. We have a lightly seasoned chicken that I think is a good place for meat eaters to start, because you can just open the pack, throw it into a stir fry, and voila, in 5 minutes, you have a delicious, well textured product, too. I think that's one of the keys on addressing the meat eaters, is just having a not just a good flavor, but a really good texture. And there's so many good meat alternatives right now, from Beyond Impossible, all these
Mhm.
guys, and all the way down to just any sort of product that you see, even at the farmer's market now. The taste and texture of these vegan products now is so much better than it ever was, and especially, back from where I come from in the 1980s, when there just was nothing, pretty much, that you could get. But it it's a new day, and I hope that Nancy will experiment with not just Tofurkey, but all these other brands, because there's really great products out there right now.
Yes, I just want to quickly summarize for Nancy. So, soy has all the 9 essential amino acids. It is a complete protein. It is no slight comment to say that it is a miracle food. It is really wonderful. It is very high in protein, and Asians have been living on it for years with wonderful health benefits. And then, vital wheat gluten is also going to be just that germ of the wheat. So, again, you're getting lots of protein. And then, if you really think about what's in your meat, the only reason people like it is for the spices. So, once you've got the texture down, which Tofurkey, I can affirm, has done that. My favorite being the Italian sausage, just FYI, Nancy. Once you get the texture down and you've got these really strong proteins, then it's a question of spices, which they've nailed as well. So that's wonderful.
Yeah. I do.
So,
Can I throw in? I just was reading the comments over here. There was Elisa wanted to know, will we have
oh, yes.
wheat-free options in the future? We do have some wheat-free options, gluten-free options right now. Our ground products. We have a chorizo and a ground beef alternative that are gluten-free. All the tempehs are gluten-free, and so we have those, and we are looking at more in the future. And I believe the cheese is also wheat free, gluten free. So there we go on that. And then I think it might have been your sister, Michelle. Do you have a sister, Michelle?
I do. There she is. Yes.
Yeah, she said, "Don't forget the teachers," and she's
Yes.
right.
Yes.
Teachers are heroes. I used to be a teacher. I was a elementary school teacher and teacher naturalist. So big shout out to the hero teachers, because they're awesome.
Yes, thanks to my sister for watching. Okay, but wait, back to business, folks. Do you think that we will be seeing any sort of financial assistance or incentives such that we could have a balanced playing field in the market, which is what free capitalism is supposed to be? So you've just seen $16 billion of a bailout for meat and dairy. And the Plant Based Food Association, as I understand it, is trying to get subsidies or incentives to help plant based businesses, the actual businesses that are taking us forward, not only in business and invention, but also in health and reducing the expensive costs to our healthcare market because we are so sick. So they're actually, plant based businesses are economically taking us in the right direction. Do you think we're going to see any assistance for plant based businesses?
Yeah, nothing direct that I would say in the way of a bailout. The Tofurkey company is not going to, we've never gotten anything. I guess we need to buy a senator or congressman more or something. I mean, I don't know how much they cost, but
They cost a lot.
uh, well, no, but that there is a huge hidden cost in meat and dairy. Everything from you know cleanup of the waterways and everything, like when there's a spill, or just the normal operations go somewhere, to just the outright marketing support. Here's, like,
Yeah.
the milk mustache thing, that was all paid for by you and me and the
Mhm.
government. And so the subsidy piece is just a huge bone of contention in every conversation that you would have with a m- you know vegan company, because we're out here on our own,
Right.
and we live or die. And by our own profits or our own self. So it's really not a fair
Level
playing
playing field.
field at all. And, but so a lot of that is just like due to what percent of the market does the fast growing meat alternative space, for instance, have versus animal based meats. And even though, like right now, the growth rate of plant based meats is, it's 128% a year in the grocery channel in America. I
Which is
just got the
huge.
thing. It's unbelievable. Like
Mhm.
grocery stores, if they grow 2%
They're
a
thrilled.
year with all foods, they're thrilled, and for a long time, the plant-based sector was kicking along at 5% or 6%, which was great. And they were like, oh, you're growing twice as fast as the rest of the food. This is a hot category. We got to get more in. And now, they just don't know what to make of, 128% growth. So it's really amazing to see that. But even with that growth, there still is such a discrepancy. We're barely 1% of the amount of money that there is for the market share of animal based meat. So there's a long way to go, which is why we need all brands. It's so much bigger job than one brand to
Mhm.
bring vegan foods
Mhm.
where they need to be. Plant-based milks maybe about 13% by retail volume, dollar volume. So that is like a much bigger category. But there's a long way to go here and a long way to grow. And we're up against tradition and a lot of
Yes.
myths about
Yes.
food and a lot of
And
just
protein.
hidden things that the government is helping to hide by giving these kind of bailouts and money to these companies that, you know, it's hard to imagine that with the amount of market share they have, that they haven't been totally profitable. And I don't know what they've been doing with their money that they need to bail out after 1 month, but um, it does on the surface really stink, actually.
Yes, yes. I appreciate your candor there. You've said so many things. I want to summarize it for people who might be hearing some of these financials for the first time. So, first of all, the meat industry and dairy as well is a very bad economic equation. So we cut down trees. Now we need those trees because they pull carbon out of the air and they help us with our climate crisis. But we cut them down to grow grains. These grains have lots of fiber. They have lots of protein. Do we give this food to people? No, we give it to animals, and then we have to give the animals water and give the animals land and give the animals more grain and cut down more trees because the animals need months and years to grow. And when they don't grow fast enough, even when we put them in horrible conditions that are sick for themselves and for us, we still have to give them more grains as they go, and we give them antibiotics and hormones, and then they make us sick, and then we feed that meat, those animals, to people. And do we even use all of that animal food? No, because we don't use the blood and bones and hooves and tails. And so it's a very inefficient equation. It takes a long time. It's very resource intensive: water, land, trees. And we cut down many more trees and grow much more grains than we need to, because we could just feed those grains to people. Instead, we feed them to animals. So it's very wasteful. And then on top of all that, resource and calorie waste. So this is a chicken equation. It's from the World Resources Institute. 9 calories of grains go into a chicken and we get 1 calorie back. So no business person would say, hey, I'll give you 90 cents so you can give me a dime back. It's much worse for cows. It's something to the tune of $350 to $3.50 to a dime back. So it's a very inefficient equation. And then you add insult to injury when these businesses are already inefficient and not very competitive. They're getting lots of subsidies to help them kind of bolster them up. and then plant-based businesses, which are efficient businesses, aren't getting any help whatsoever. So it's very frustrating. But as you said, a plant-based business still represents about 1% of the meat market. So that leaves 99% to meat. And that's why it's really a tricky business to turn around. One last thing I'll say before I hand it over to Seth is, in addition to the subsidies, there's even more money given to them to pay for their advertising. So milk does a body good. You paid for that, folks. That was your tax dollars at work. So, very frustrating equation indeed. Anything
Yeah.
I missed, Seth?
No, well, I just want to point out that's part of the inefficiency of animal agriculture too, is just the vast amounts of land that are needed to grow this inefficient product. I mean, uh, that really puts the pressure on places like the Amazon, that are growing
Right.
soy. They're not growing soy for us. We get our soy from an organic farmer in Texas, and it's just awful to see what we're doing to the natural habitat of the earth, which we've mentioned before is protecting us from virus and has so much that they add to the health of the planet in terms of carbon sequestering, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just really one of the big benefits of a plant-based diet is just the amount of land that you can um, return or not use for agricultural production that you can use for just keeping wildlife habitat safe and healthy
Protecting us, yes, and
and
protecting us
protecting
then
us.
in turn. And I'll
Yeah,
also say that as we go from 7 billion people on the planet to 10 billion people, but we're not getting more land and we're not getting
no,
more water, this becomes an untenable equation, as Seth and I have just said. So hit me up if you want more of those mathematical details as to the inefficiency of meat and dairy. Happy to share all that. But it is a bad equation, and it boils down, it's a bad equation. It's bad business for your health, for your wallet, and for the planet, not to mention animals. Okay, but Seth, I think you have touched on all of this already in your book. Let's show your book. There it is, In Search of the Wild Tofurky. So this is available on Amazon.com, which is still delivering. Thank you, Amazon. And talk about heroes, all the people who are still delivering food and getting medicine and packages to people. Thank you for that. One of the packages they could deliver to people is the book In Search of the Wild Tofurky. You launched this earlier this month, and tell me a little bit about the experience of writing this book and why you wanted to write it.
yeah. This book tells the story of Tofurkey, which people think you just sort of we started with Tofurkey, but actually I started making tempeh in 1980 and had 15 years of very slow growth. When there really wasn't a category for plant-based foods at all in the supermarkets. Um, Back in 1980 when I started making tempeh, the only place you could get tofu were the small little natural food co-ops. And I remember they used to bring in the tofu in these big white buckets that had tofu cakes floating in them. And then the volunteers would take the cakes out and they'd put them in a Chinese restaurant takeaway container and they'd put it on the shelf and you'd scribble on their tofu. So that was where we started in this adventure. This is talking about the growth of not just Tofurkey and how we started and all the crazy things that happened and selling to the Rajneeshis over there in Eastern Oregon, going to the farm where I learned about tempeh, which had 1,200 hippies eating an all pure vegetarian diet. Do you remember that? They didn't even call the diet vegan back in the 1970s. This was at the farm. They said you're a vegetarian, which meant you ate cheese and eggs and dairy, or you were a pure vegetarian and you didn't eat any of that. So they had like 1,200 pure vegetarians living on this farm, and they did wonderful things. And it was a great place to visit. And they turned me on to tempeh because at that time I was before tempeh. I was making these soy grit burgers. Do you remember soy grits? Like they're
No,
just little
no.
bits of raw soybean, and I would take these and I'd combine them with flour to hold them together and spices and onion, and I would cook them up in a pan. And because they were just raw soybeans, man, it didn't taste that good, but they digested worse. I mean, it was really a struggle to be a vegetarian. So I read about tempeh in this farm literature, and I was working in Tennessee, and so I said I got to go over and find out about this because they were saying A, tempeh tastes great, and B, it's digestible. And I was like, great tasting vegan food. Wow, there's a concept. Digestible. Whoa, even better. This is a win-win. I got to get this. And I went and got the tempeh, and it was just I made my first batch of tempeh when I was living in this tent out in summer of 1977, and it was just everything it was cracked up to be. It was so good. I just fell in love with it and started making it professionally in 1980. So now that the plant-based foods world has come this far, I still have, a very soft spot in my heart for all vegan companies. It's not just, the Beyond Meats and the Impossible Foods. That's great. I love what they're doing, but it's also, the real small, like
Mhm.
startup companies that have this vision, and they're making vegan cheese in their
Mhm.
household kitchen, and they're selling it at the farmers market. And then I mean, these are some of the businesses that will grow like Tofurkey grew, because we grew from a $2,500 investment and a little kitchen the size of most people's living room or a small apartment in a co-op in Forest Grove to this big worldwide brand and company. And so the lessons along the way, are sort of interlaced with all these fun stories about renting excess classrooms in this school that I was renting out to make the tempeh in to these circus clowns that tune pianos. And it's just crazy. I mean, I was living in a tree for a while, and tempeh, it's just like a rollicking. It's a good story, even if you're not a Tofurkey fan or if you're not, a business fan. I mean, it's sort of the anti-business book because I was, you know, pretty dumb about the ways of business right from the start, and like I went to this small business association meeting in this big hotel room once, like right because I'd never taken a business course. So I was like, oh, maybe these guys can teach me some about business. And this big business guy gets up there in a suit and he's got these big rings on his fingers and a tie. And he starts out and he goes, how many of you people, there's a room full of 100 of us entrepreneurs. He goes, how many of you people are out there to save the world? And I was going, yes, this guy gets it. That's me. And then I looked around. I go, "Oh, look at
The only
that!
one.
I'm the only one with that." And he goes, "I thought so." Looking at me, and I'm feeling like, eh. And then he goes, "How many of you are out here to make money?" And he's like, "Yay!" Everybody's like going crazy. But having a mission of wanting to bring this low on the food chain food to America kept me in it for a lot of years. The first 9 years, I made $31,000 in take-home pay, and so it was kind of a failure for many years in terms of finances. But having that mission of just wanting to see veganism grow has been great. And I think that's the superpower of all small vegan businesses or of any size, not just small businesses, like even, Ethan Brown, like he's got a mission, Patrick Brown, those guys are on a mission. And I think all vegan businesses to one degree or another have a mission, and I just wanted to fan the flames of vegan businesses and tell a fun story because it's been a fun life, really,
It
and I've really enjoyed living it, and just wanted to share the details. And
it
um,
it is really such a fun book because I sort of think of it as like the vegan electric Kool-Aid acid test, in a way.
it could be,
It's it's like your vegan journey through, clowns and tree houses and also to Nancy's point when she asked a question a while back about, well, what's in Tofurkey? I think people have that vision of all vegans are living in tree houses as hippies. And in fact, it was only Seth. Seth was the one and
well,
only guy in the 70s. I mean, of course, there were more, but I mean, we have come so far from that vision of I don't take a shower. Not that this was your case, Seth. I live in a treehouse and I eat undigestible food. The world has changed. Vegan food tastes great. It has advanced well beyond what we ever thought it would. And you have indeed left the treehouse. So
Well,
things
yeah,
have
but look at
changed.
this.
I
This
know.
is my suit right now. All right, so I'm don't discount that I'm not still hippie-ish.
Yes, no. Oh,
Please,
that comes through. No, we got the hippie. We got the hippie loud and clear.
good.
I love that. So we have one more guest coming on today because I know that you have, like all of us, have been so concerned about New York and have been trying to help New York, and you specifically have partnered up, I'll say, or maybe I'll say Tofurkey has partnered up and really tried to support those who are trying to help those in New York. So let me just not talk about it, but bring him on. I want to bring on Felipe Alvalos. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He's going to join us. He is indeed in New York City, and his company, Big Love Catering. Hi, Felipe.
Hello.
His company, Big Love Catering, has stayed in New York, hasn't left, has stayed there sort of in the war zone and really made an effort to get food to those who are treating the sick and in New York, the dying. So, Felipe, thanks for being with us. And maybe
Thank you for having me.
yeah, I'm thrilled that you're here. Maybe, Seth, you can explain how you two came to be in touch and how Tofurkey is supporting Big Love. And then Big Love, Felipe, I want to hear all about how you're helping New York. So I'll start with Seth.
Well, yeah, right about the time I was launching the book, I got contacted by my friend Ray Ippolito down in Florida, who's also a good friend of Philippe's, and he told me about Philippe's amazing work. Like, it's just sort of depressed to see, like, especially what was going on in New York City and everything with COVID. So I got in touch with Felipe, who was making at that time 100 free vegan meals, boxes out of his kitchen in Brooklyn. And he's a caterer that has done a lot of catering for. I mean, I'll let Philippe tell the whole story, but he's done some big catering. And his last job was March 13th, I believe, when sort of everything closed down in New York City, and he had the choice of whether to run off to the upstate New York or the Hamptons or to stay and try and help out. And he chose stay to help out, which was amazing. And so here he was. It's so cool. Like his family, Lena and Valentino, his 13-year-old son, are in there. You know, talk about a bootstrap. They're making these meals into these boxes, which is what the hospitals could use. Like Philippe told me that for a while that people were showing up with big pans of lasagna and stuff, and they couldn't do that because it all has to be sanitary and safe and wrapped. And I just love this guy. So I started a fundraiser on Facebook, which just went off, and we were able to get $7,800, I think it is, Philippe, in a
Yeah,
little over a week. But it's
terrific.
all because of this guy's love and his network, and he has all of his artists and musician friends that are helping out, and they're doing these deliveries. I mean, it's one of the greatest vegan stories I've ever heard. Is this guy and the big love that he does. And Tofurkey donated some stuff. Miyoko's donated some stuff. Follow Your Heart donated some stuff. But it's really this: nothing happens without the sweat of Philippe and his family and wonderful Valentino. They're out there making these things, and I'm just blown away by the goodness of
Thank you,
this man's
Seth.
heart and the project and what he's done. So, yeah.
Okay, so a couple questions here, Philippe. Again, thank you for all that you do and for being
Thank
here.
you, Elizabeth.
I'd love to hear your story of why you decided to stay and what it's been like to support the medical community there on the ground. But more importantly, before you tell me that, I want to write on this ticker tape that you see below you. I want to write the fundraising email. Do either of you have that link so that people can support if they'd like?
It's in my Instagram bio, and that would
Okay.
be big_love_FELI. And the GoFundMe link is on my Instagram page.
Okay, and it's the last part is FP. F is in Frank.
No,
P.
F is in Frank, E is in Edward, L is in Larry, I is in Igloo.
Oh, great. Okay, great. I will put that on the ticker tape. Okay, so while I'm writing, tell everyone what it's been like to help the medical community on the ground in New York.
I mean, for me, it's actually been one of the most rewarding things I've done. And really, like Seth said, I mean, he knows our story, quite well. And Seth, first, I want to thank you 1000% because being able to speak to Seth, I think we speak maybe, 5, 10 times a day. It's so encouraging and it gives us a lot of strength. And actually, the decision that we made to stay was something that we thought about. Do we take our 13-year-old and my wife and I and go head upstate or up to Vermont? And we decided, you know what, we're going to stay and we're going to help. We have a friend that works, she runs the ICU, coronary ICU unit at Mount Sinai. And we were just hearing unbelievable stories of what was happening. And so I decided, you know what? All my catering jobs have been canceled for the foreseeable future, and I've got a pantry full of stuff. So let me put some meals together. And I asked her how many people were in her unit. And she said, I have 25 people in my unit, but there are 2 other units. If you can kind of work something for them as well, that would be great. So she said, it's about 50 or 60 people. And we decided, okay, we'll make 60 meals. My friend Ray, who Seth mentioned, he is a diehard vegan activist and a guy who's been a thorn in my side for the last 11 years. God bless him. So he calls me up and he says, Felipe, what you're doing is great, but do me a favor. And I just want to, for all transparency, I consider myself a transitioning vegan. Okay.
We love you. We're the big market in the United States.
Yeah. And so he said, Felipe, do me a favor. Okay. COVID is because of wet markets and it's because of this and that. And, I've been telling you for 11 years, do me a favor, make all the meals vegan. And I said, well, you know what? I've been getting donations of non-vegan foods. And I do I throw it out? So I said, you know what, Ray, I will pledge that every meal that I send out is going to be 100% vegan. Okay. And this is before I met Seth or the guys that Follow Your Heart or Miyoko or Kurt's Freaking Vegan, all like amazing people, Raw Rev, Juice Generation, people that have been supporting 1000%. And I said, okay, you know what? I will not buy anything that's animal products, and I will promise you that everything that I send out will be vegan.
Thank you for doing that.
I'm going to put you in touch with my good friend Seth. Okay. And I spoke to Seth, and Seth, without any hesitation, said, Felipe, I'm going to set up a fundraiser for you, and we're going to do this, this, and this, and we're going to send you product. And before you know it, we were sending 120, 130, 140, 150. We've sent as much as close to 200 meals a day.
Wow.
And it's all being done with my 13-year-old son, my wife, and actually my assistant, who after her 3-week quarantine actually came in to start helping us out. And that's when we've been able to increase our numbers to close to 200. People we're delivering to about 5 or 6 hospitals now, every day now, especially after the Forbes article. Our phone's been ringing off the shelf with doctors and nurses who want to get our Big Love boxes delivered to them. And it's just been fantastic. I mean, and as someone who is a chef and loves to cook, I'm challenged every day of how I'm going to make that meal. I take the word vegan out. I'm just going to make that the best possible meal, tasting like, I don't know, people have been texting me and writing emails saying, what is it? What cheese did you use? That is not vegan. And it's like, yes, it is. It's been fabulous.
Well, so let me ask you a couple of things. First of all, at this point, are the hospitals finding you or are you finding them? And then also, when you get these food donations, so then you guys work to make all the individual boxes. So, or are you taking donations and making the boxes, or you're also cooking yourself?
No, we're making all of the food ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah, everything is coming out of our kitchen. Okay.
Okay.
So
Wow.
together with the donations and
Yes.
all the food that we had and the product that we had in our kitchens, we've just been putting out as many meals as we possibly can on a daily basis.
Wow. Wow. That's so much work. And how many hours are you putting in a day? Because those are long days. And then, of course, cooking
I
is always a physical job on your feet.
I tell you, I've never worked so hard in my life. Uh, it's we start out I start out at 5:30, 6 in the morning, and I'll finish close to 11 o'clock at night because it's not only the cooking, going out to the store to buy, it's coming and prepping, and then we have a lot of people to thank and a fair amount of social media to do at night also.
Of
So
course.
yeah,
Of course. And then are the hospitals finding you or are you reaching out to them?
it's
And
been. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, and I'm just wondering if any, because sometimes the medical community is slow, despite all the health benefits, to adopting to a plant-based diet. Has there been any resistance to the plant-based food?
None whatsoever. It's all the things that you guys were speaking about before. Uh, I think it comes at a time where people are conscious of the fact that meat may not be a good thing for them. Okay. Uh, I was in the fashion business before I was in the food business, and I worked for a huge company. And the CEO of that company, who was worth $20 billion, used to tell me, you know what, if ever you're doing anything in business, make sure you fall on your face and not on your derriere. Okay.
I like
And
it.
it's something that I've always taken with everything that I've ever done. And this plant-based food business and everything that we were talking about, it's falling forward. So we're
Yes.
charging forward. So
Yes.
everything that Seth did 40 years ago, all the trailblazers that have gotten us to this point right now, is that if I'm going to fall on my face, I'm not going to go into the food business to offer a horse and buggy. I want to
Right.
go into the food business to, offer spaceships. Okay.
Mm,
And the food, the plant-based food business is the future. Uh,
absolutely.
so I'm not finding any resistance whatsoever. And it's a matter of fact, it's not so much even the doctors, it's the nurses, it's the people that normally would be eating a hamburger and
Hmm.
a turkey sandwich that are eating this stuff and writing back and saying, "Oh my God, this is amazing." So it's
You,
rewarding in that sentiment.
you
But
know,
before Seth hops on, hold on. I just want to say, Philippe, I'm going to ask you to tilt your camera down a little bit. If we reposition where your face is, excellent. I want to, okay, Seth, I don't know if it's possible for you to do the same. I want to keep this Instagram up there. Everyone, you can support Big Love, which is giving vegan meals out to all of the medical community that desperately needs it as they work double and triple shifts in New York. Please go to Instagram.com, big_love_FELI. Seth, what did you want to say?
Oh, I just wanted to point out that Felipe has shared some of the texts and posts that he's getting from first responders and doctors, who, like, they're not all vegan that are eating these vegan lunches, and they're just blown away by, how good they say. Like, I had no idea that vegan food could taste this good. So this guy is like a genius about, taking foods. Like, he made this creamy pasta dish the other day that was just so incredible. And, he had a little salad, I think, and a bar, and then this pasta. And uh, Philippe, do you have some of those posts in mind, or some of the things that these non-vegan responders and doctors who are in this chaotic environment maybe have 15 or 20 minutes to stuff down
Mm.
lunch and have been writing to you and saying?
Well, it's that they can't believe that it's vegan. That's the first thing. And the second thing that I'm getting a lot of is, where is they call it the box guy, where's the love box guy? So because someone said, why aren't you just delivering to the same hospital or the same two hospitals every day? Okay. So we started delivering to Mount Sinai, Brooklyn, and then we started delivering to Elmhurst, which is one of the largest hit, the most hardest hit hospitals in Queens. And then we went from there to Wild Cornell, and from Wild Cornell,
Mm.
Brookdale, now Nassau, uh, University Medical Center, which is out in Long Island. Okay.
Oh.
And Beth Israel. So it's kind of like we wanted to share the love a bit, and be able to spread it around. So a lot of the places, if they miss a day or two, they start asking like, where are our boxes? Because the alternative has been, getting pizza, delivered, or the hospital food, which is, a really substandard sandwich made out of some chicken salad or whatever it is that they put in there. So yeah, it's great to be reading the feedback that we're getting. So.
Well, you have such an incredible impact because not only are you helping the medical community, but you're turning all of these people into vegan fans, which is better for their own health, which is going to make them advocate for better health in hospitals,
Absolutely.
which in addition gives people going into hospitals better health. And then you have this army of doctors, and people tend to listen to doctors more than they might listen to me and Seth, even though we're all on the same page. And so you have this army of doctors now that is getting the nutritional education that oddly enough, they didn't get in medical school. No, very little nutrition is given in medical school. So you alone, sir, with Big Love Catering, I'm Sicilian, so I know that there's no better way to get to people than through food. You alone, sir, are really changing the world right up there with Seth. I am so deeply grateful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
This guy too, I want to point out, Felipe, one of his ideas, which I thought was brilliant, is, this has been such a powerful experience for him and anybody that's been associated with it, is he'd like to continue. And, anywhere there's crisis in the world, he wants to be like this person that would come in and do the same thing that he's done here in New York, which I think is a fabulous idea. It's like a vegan version of the Red Cross or something. And, like what a powerful idea is that? Because, when you're in crisis, when you're hurting, I mean, having somebody give you a loving meal and a great meal, you don't forget that. And I just think it's a brilliant idea. And, I want to, when this is all plays out in New York, I want to sit down with this guy and talk about that more.
We're gonna do
I think
it,
that's
Seth.
a big idea, and he's the guy to do it.
Absolutely,
So,
we're gonna do it.
You guys all heard it here on the Plant-Based Business Hour that Big Love Catering is really going to grow into the Vegan Red Cross. I want everybody to follow up on this. What a wonderful idea. Felipe, where do you see things going? Because you are on the ground in New York. I'm here in Los Angeles today, and Seth, I believe, is in Portland. So give us that East Coast perspective. We all understand that the death rate's coming down, infection rate is peaking and reversing, let's say, slowing down. Are you beginning to feel it? Are things lightening up? What's the atmosphere there like in the hospitals?
Seth and I speak about this every day because we like to gauge, how long and, we're going to be serving first responders. The sentiment is that the chaos has died down. Okay. The chaos in that the beds aren't in the hall anymore. The body bags aren't going out the same way. However, the death numbers are still pretty high.
Significant.
Yeah. And, so it's a little bit less chaotic, but a lot of, I'll point out, a dear friend of ours, Holly Kozak, who's the head of the IC unit over at Mount Sinai in Brooklyn, and Larissa Galante, who's been another nurse that has been helping us a lot. And she works out of 3 hospitals and has taken us to the other 3 hospitals that she also works in. They're still working 24-hour days. Okay. Which is absolutely incredible. Yeah. And, we're dealing with this situation now where, people are starting to relax. Like when I went out today, it seemed like the streets of New York for 3 weeks, they were completely desolate. And now, there's traffic again. So people are just like, what the hell? And they're hitting the streets again, which is what we were all fearing. There's going to be a spike again.
Wave.
Yeah, a second wave. And, so that's kind of the feeling that's happening here now. We're still going to shelter at home. I go out because I have to. We're extremely careful. My son hasn't left the house for, we take walks and we try to make sure that no one's around. We've got a park that's close by and, we'll take him out for a run. But the general feeling is things are a little bit more calm, but
The danger's still there.
the danger is still
Absolutely.
totally there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Seth, I didn't know if you were going to hop in there, but if not, I have another question. But
No, go ahead.
So both of you in the thick of it so much, and both of you so much experience behind you. I wonder if there's a phrase you say to yourselves when things aren't going well. And of course, we've had a string of bad days here with COVID. I'll start with Felipe. Is there something that you say to yourself when you're down and you're just not feeling it, and that you just try to get yourself right back into it?
Not to be cliche-ish or anything, but when things get really hard, I tend to get even busier. So I don't have time to really focus on whatever is meant to be bad, which is pretty much what made my decision to stay. Getting up at 5:30, 6 in the morning and having a purpose and something to do makes everything else that's happening seem a lot more tolerable. So no, I really don't. I just kind of put my head down, and kind of lean into the wind. So
I love that, because you don't have a phrase that you say, but it reminds me of a phrase that I like to say a lot, which is nose to the grindstone, eyes to the sky.
yeah,
I try not to
it.
get caught up in the details. I just keep working really. I work right through it, or I try to.
Exactly.
Philippe's been great too about sharing some of the photos of the day-to-day life and everything he's doing on his Instagram and Facebook. And one of my favorite photos that he did send, is like, now these guys have labels on the boxes. They printed up big love labels, and that's great. And but before that, they were just writing on the boxes, weren't you? And
my wife was handwriting. She's an artist, by the way. And
yeah,
I also want to give a big shout out to our artist community who have been unbelievable. They're the ones coming and driving, doing whatever they can. Where they haven't had money to donate, they donated time. For instance, one of our artist friends designed the Big Love logo that we put on the stickers. Another one had a great printer, and he's done all the printing. It's been an amazing collaboration.
But before they did that, they had written one day on all the boxes, "This too shall pass." And imagine being, in this situation where you're just putting your life on the line and you're a first responder and you've had God knows what chaos, and you get this beautiful, loving meal, and then it says just the reminder, this too will pass. It's just some of the greatest stuff ever, of what, I don't know. They need to build a statue to you, Philippe, in
No, please.
Brooklyn. Come on.
No,
I
not
love
at
the
all.
love.
No,
Oh my gosh. I want to say again, if people want to support Big Love Catering, go to the Instagram page,
Thank you.
Instagram.com, big_love_FELI. Felipe Alvalos of Big Love Catering has been getting vegan meals to all of the first responders and the hospitals and the doctors and nurses who are working 24-hour shifts, as we just heard. Both of you bring years of experience and decades to the game, which I love, because there aren't a whole heck of a lot of benefits to growing older, but there are some, and some is the wisdom that you have that you can share with other people. I'm wondering what you guys, both of you, if you can answer what you know now that you wish you knew 10 years ago.
I'll let you go first, Seth. I should think about that one.
10 years ago, not that long. I mean, I'll probably go back to 40 years ago.
Okay, fair enough.
Of just wanting to, assure myself, because I couldn't envision the world that has come right now, and the market that has come. I mean, and there was a time, certainly, around 1990, after being in business for 9 years and sort of feeling like a failure, and was a failure. I mean, I was pretty good at failing, and just knowing that there was a light at, an emerging market that was going to blossom and grow, and that it might have, helped me go through some of the tougher times of just, um, you know feeling like a failure, and nobody wants to talk to you about your stupid little tempeh brand and everything. So, that probably would have been nice. But honestly, I don't have a lot of regret, and I don't have a lot of, gee, I wish I had done things differently. It's been a really pretty good ride. I just feel more lucky and blessed than I feel regret. So,
Felipe, how for you?
Well, I wish Seth would have written that book 10 years ago, and I would have bought it then, because it would have helped me a lot. I think by contrast, if you listen to what Seth said, that he started 40 years ago, and the struggle, and how you emerge at the end of the struggle successful. I kind of look at mine in reverse. I came out of college and I went in to work for a big fashion house and did amazingly well. And at 27, 28 years of age, I was flying on Gulfstream jets all over Europe and, going to the Far East on private planes. And, that was great, but it wasn't success because I didn't find something that I was passionate about, and kind of wish that I'd have found what I'm passionate about now, okay, back then. And I'm sure instead of chasing the almighty dollar, 30 years ago, I would have chased, what I was passionate about. And, I'd have my own little Tofurkey brand somewhere, So
Yeah, I do know what you're saying. I call it a lot the bingo effect. So when you have your skill set and you align it with your passion, you're just like 120% of yourself. You have won the jackpot, because when you're not working in your own passion zone, every day is like lifting heavy furniture, even if you're flying around on jets,
Absolutely.
So when you can get into that passion zone, you've nailed it. You've won the bingo. Okay, you guys, I don't want to keep you because I know there's like big love food being given out everywhere. I do have one exit question though. I'm wondering if you can both tell me one word real fast. What's your favorite junk food? Your go-to junk food. You don't have time to eat, Felipe, because you're making food for everybody else. What's your go-to snack?
My pizza.
Your pizza.
Yeah, pizza be close.
Vegan pizza.
Vegan pizza. Oh, you right up my alley, sir.
Yeah.
What about you, Seth?
I have some brownies that my wife made for me for my birthday Monday, and so I got to go with brownies.
Happy birthday. You had a birthday this week. Well, happy birthday to you and to Tofurkey. I want to thank Felipe Alvalos for really making the world a better place.
Thank you so much.
You, sir, are a hero. And Nancy commented here that all of the people helping are heroes, and you are included in that, Felipe. If you want to give, everyone, please help support. He is giving free vegan meals to all of the first responders and nurses and doctors on the ground in New York City, often working 24-hour shifts. Go to Instagram.com at big_love_FELI. Thank you for all you do. Seth Tibbott, I love you, Seth. I always have. I always will. Seth Tibbott is the founder of Tofurkey. We wouldn't have a plant-based world. We wouldn't even be able to have vegan meals from Big Love Catering if we didn't have Tofurkey first. So thank you for decades of building us the foundation. Your book, which I just quickie little plug here, if you guys don't mind, your book, In Search of the Wild Tofurky. I'm going to take myself out of this. Well, I can't. Okay. Your book, In Search of the Wild Tofurky, is out now. Everybody go get it because it's a great read. And if you want to hear about hippies and tree houses and the vegan electric Kool-Aid acid test, I call it, you want to get In Search of the Wild Tofurky. Both of you, thank you for all you do. Until I see everybody tomorrow, 1 p.m. on the Plant-Based Business Hour, remember, together we're taking back our health and the health of the planet. Bye, everybody.
You, Seth. Love you, Seth.
Love you guys. Big love to everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers.